All right, it's that time again. It's a little bit later than normal, 9 o'clock, 9:07 p.m. on Sunday, October 14th. We are the Irish Coffee and Donuts posse here, ready to do a little recap on Stanford, talk some BCS. The BCS rankings just came out here about 10 minutes ago. We're embracing the hate. I'm getting in Twitter battles with people.
Excellent.
I'm digging it. I am the asshole fan that I never wanted to be. I didn't want to talk about being good for a while, and now I'm just blatant
Right.
for it. So,
Well, let's open up with that. I mean, you know, it's a typical thing. Every year, Notre Dame fans are typically extremely delusional, and everybody else is everybody's either on the bandwagon or hating. You know, I have to deal with a lot of hatred in the office. You talk about the Twitter battle, but look, if you're a Notre Dame fan, if you're a fan of any team, it doesn't have to be Notre Dame, but if you're a Notre Dame fan, come on. I mean, this is all justified, is it not? The BCS is coming out. They're number 5 in the BCS. I think they're still number 5 in the AP. They're undefeated. They've had all their games in primetime, so everybody's seen it. There's no tricks here. There's no smoke and mirrors. We can get into your little, your battle with somebody about how they haven't played anybody. We can get into that in just a minute, but this is enough to start throwing out some, hey, it's our time, right? I mean, the sky is not falling this time, or we're not crying wolf, whatever the applicable
it's
nursery rhyme is right there.
It started for me earlier in the day with the, and so I guess we can tie this into Stanford with the final touchdown that should have been for Stanford. Basically, the refs choked it, or Notre Dame cheated, I guess was the gist of some of these tweets that I was replying to.
Right.
It's like, listen, I watched the play a couple of times. The guy, it looks like his elbow hits the ground. I mean, there's a couple things. First of all, Kavari Russell is protecting the corner. He's coming around the left side. He sees the guy get hit. The guy starts rolling. Kavari's just jumping. Like, that bugs me a little bit. It's like, listen, man, that's a pretty critical play. You're standing 3 feet away. You're making sure nobody gets outside. You have to contain. That's great. Once you see him in there and he's stopped initially, hey, playing over, man. Stop clapping your hands. Jump in there, grab the dude by his belt, and yank him back.
Yeah.
But regardless, the refs called it no touchdown. The sideline guy had a pretty clear view of it. The refs are Pac-12 referees.
Yeah, what do you want? I mean,
and some chicks on there like, oh, I just watched this and I think it was a touchdown. Really? So you apparently on your on your black and white TV at home.
Well, look,
is more
no, it's
qualified than a professional replay.
It's not even about that. That was obvious. That was clearly the type of play. I had the horrible luxury of watching the other play that was eerily similar against USC in 2005. And you know what? I really don't think back to that game in 2005 in my history saying USC cheated and Notre Dame should have won.
They did.
But
that's a rules violation.
That's true, but what I don't sit there thinking.
No, we lost. We
lost. Look, let's go back to the Michigan State game when they ran the fake field goal. There was no time on the clock.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
but do we go back to that and say, oh, get the record books out, people? Look, we had screenshots. There was no time on the clock when Michigan State won a game. But you know what? You need to be better than the refs being able to screw you.
I've always felt that, and I think I always will, which is to say, if you feel like you got screwed by the refs on one play or something bad happened to you in overtime or whatever it is, that's your own damn fault for being in an overtime game.
Right.
That's your own damn fault for being up by 2 or down by 5 or whatever it was where you could be affected by one play. Because if you handled your business all game and you're up by 28, it don't matter.
And I agree with the people that are saying. Now, I agree with the people saying it's a blown call. The NFL this year the big topic has been the blown calls when they had the replacement refs. But saying Notre Dame cheated, come on, that's a little bit different. They're not putting out USC cheats, okay? Yeah. They put guys out that are ineligible. They take money, things like that. That's cheating. You know what I mean? That's something that's a different level. You can say the refs blew the call. That's fine, but you can't watch any sport at any level without going back in your own memory bank and saying we got screwed in this game. The ref screwed us in that game. Basketball calls. Chris Webber traveled before he called timeout. You know what I mean? But it's over. Like you have to be better. You have to be good enough that the refs will not screw you on a call. And you know what? If you want to call that play a touchdown, that's a pretty wimpy touchdown. I mean, and that's what it is. So I'm not saying it wouldn't count because it was wimpy, but there's a difference between driving the ball across the line no ref is going to give you that on the fourth down. They're not going to give it to you, So it is what it is.
Here's E.Love. This is my new Twitter pal right here at @ITZ_E_Love. I'm going off of what I've watched, my football knowledge, not what some computer says. So I said, hey, he said we haven't played anybody. I said, hey, Sagarin's got him as the 17th toughest schedule in the country, and that's not my opinion. Those are statistics. So at ITZ_E_Love says, I'm going off what I've watched and my football knowledge, not what some computer says. Notre Dame is a mediocre college football team. Are they?
Well, no. And here's the thing. On the offensive side of the ball, they're probably mediocre, hopefully cracking into good. Okay, we've seen some flashes. But to call Notre Dame's defense mediocre is just, I'm not going to sit here and listen to somebody insult Notre Dame's defense. That's absurd.
They are the number one, I just looked at it today, number one red zone defense in the country.
Right. And we've talked about this before. There's a bend, don't break philosophy. They're not giving up touchdowns. The opposing team, once again, the touchdown scored was by the opposing team's defense, right?
Now,
in the game.
Did you see the BCS show at all? I know you were out lifting.
No.
I don't know if they had it on. So Jesse Palmer said...
Thanks for calling it lifting. I was on a Stairmaster.
Okay, well, hey, man.
That.
Your calves look great.
Sure.
So Jesse Palmer says Notre Dame will not be in a BCS game if Everett Golson continues to start. How do you feel about that?
Let me throw this back something to you and throw it back to Jesse Palmer. Do you think Notre Dame could, I don't know all the math just yet, but I believe they could make a BCS game. If they lost to Oklahoma and lost to USC, I'm pretty sure they can make a BCS game.
And if they're 8th or better.
And there's no doubt in my mind
that
if he could beat any team but those easily, the rest of the teams on the schedule. He could beat Pitt, he could beat Boston College, he could beat BYU, right? I mean, we all agree with that.
Wake Forest in there too.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Now, do we all want to get to the point where like, wow, 6-0 felt great, and let's just go ahead and chalk up Oklahoma and USC as a loss and say we're going to make it? No, none of us are in that mode. We're all riding high, but look, we should all be used to this, and this is sweet retribution. It's not just being a fan, but it's definitely being a Notre Dame fan. The Yankees are going through the same thing. Like, the Boo Birds are going to come out when Notre Dame starts to look good. And as for this whole argument about they haven't played anybody, look, college football is an absolute it's a refuge for refuge, I should say, for statistical nerds.
It's a refuse as well.
It's a refuse as well.
It's trash.
It's a refuge for statistical nerds, and I've done plenty of analysis on this. The bottom line: here's who's Notre Dame has beaten: the team on the other side of the field 6 times in a row. And what else do you want them to do? Look at their schedule out at face value. It's absurd. It's an absurd schedule. They've beaten everybody that was in front of them. What do you want them to do?
Yeah, but
are we sitting here? We did a little bit last week, but are we really bashing Alabama because they had a tune-up game in there against Western? No, I don't care. Yeah, they're number one in the.
I am a little bit. In fact,
but you're not. Are you tweeting Alabama people saying they shouldn't be number one in the country because they played
none of those
WKU?
I will say this. None of those people directly tweeted me. I searched for people saying Notre Dame.
Okay,
I searched for people saying Notre Dame sucks. I searched for people saying overrated. And I'm taking the fight to them.
Yeah, I see.
I'm an instigator.
This is more like the Crusades, then.
And I'm demanding accountability. That's what it is. This is a government accountability office right here.
Sure.
Saying, hey, you put something in writing. I've found some nutcase Michigan fans, and I'm putting them on blast. I mean, you can follow my timeline at DNDFBF.
Right.
Sunday night, go ahead and look through it. Hey, you make some, and I would expect the exact same from somebody else. If I say Notre Dame's going to destroy Oklahoma, which I don't necessarily believe, but if I said that,
right, somebody's like,
if I say Oklahoma's garbage after we have a tough game with them, hey, somebody wants to call me out for that, fine. I don't have a problem with accountability.
Well, and thankfully this is something that's left to the fans. You know full well that Brian Kelly's in the locker room right now telling these guys, hey, everybody thinks you're all great, you know what I mean? But you have to go out there and still execute on the field. And obviously he's smart enough as a coach, to still communicate that. But yeah, what do you expect? I mean, it's Notre Dame. I mean, and I haven't seen that, that much hatred and vitriol coming from people with the overrated call. Now, what I do believe, and the same thing happens every year, when Notre Dame beats Michigan stumbles a little bit, and they're actually doing okay. But Michigan State, every year,
year that they're ranked, that's the springboard. If they beat Notre Dame, it propels them to rip off 3 or 4 more wins.
Otherwise,
right
it's Notre Dame, kicking them down the hole like 300.
But I don't think. But I will in part say that I don't think Michigan State was ever the number 10 team in the country.
Right.
And I don't think Michigan is that good. Denard's good, but I don't think Michigan as a team, specifically defense, is great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Michigan can make a case saying we've lost to 2 teams that are both top 5 BCS teams.
Right.
We've lost 2 games, Alabama.
And they had the stones to kick off their season against the national champion on the road. They had the stones to do that. And I actually give Michigan a lot of respect for that. But again, college football, on its face, there is a complete fallacy in ranking teams before they even play a down. That's a ridiculous thing. And if you have half a brain, you should at least know that. So if that's the scenario, we're going to rank teams before they even play. What do you expect? Well, this is how you figure things out. It's not. I know you love Sagarin, but it's not Sagarin. And trust me, this is getting my personal soapbox here, but it's true. It's not Sagarin. It's not somebody's Twitter analysis. It's not somebody's football knowledge. Blah blah blah. That's what's wrong with college football. It's the results on the field, and it's the W-L. That's what determines this. And until Notre Dame has an L, which they don't, I have no problem with them being ranked as high as they want to be.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to put them. If they were number 1 and they jump Alabama and Oklahoma and Oregon, you know what?
That's ludicrous.
Yeah, I'm not leaving my house. But
I will say as well, like, there's a lot of people that are Notre Dame shouldn't be 5, should be higher. Computers have them ranked 2. Some computers got them ranked 1. This, that, whatever. It's like, listen, man, this is the very first BCS poll. The reality is, play the rest of your games. If you win them all, you're going to see what's what. And if you don't, it doesn't matter anyways. Don't get worked up about if you're 5th or 2nd or 3rd or 10th in the very first one. And that's fine.
And here's the great benefit for not only us as Notre Dame fans, but all the people out there that are naysaying. The wonderful benefit is Notre Dame is not looking at just like a patsy schedule for the rest of the season. If Notre Dame had nobody really difficult to play for the rest of the year, these people would probably be upset, like, oh, great, you guys are just going to run through the rest of your schedule, be undefeated, and it's just going to be a joke. But the bottom line is, they play Oklahoma, and I don't care what kind of football knowledge you have, that's a football team. And so is USC.
They could have beat,
you know what? They got to play both of them.
And Oklahoma could have beat anybody in the country the way they played against Texas.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, so we're talking about Oklahoma. We're looking past BYU, who's got like the 5th defense and the 5th best defense in the country. They're actually right behind Notre Dame in a lot of statistical categories defensively. Do you think Notre Dame as a team looks past BYU?
No, I don't think so. I feel like Kelly, and maybe this is just the little snippets that you get on the specials and from the press conferences and all that, but I feel like Kelly, I don't even know if he was really ready for this kind of success. I know he always believed it and preached that they were capable of it, but he seems to have that kind of, I don't know, almost like Phil Jackson from basketball kind of thing, where it's just got a little bit of a Zen master thing, and this has been different. He wanted everybody to be there so badly the first season, and I always talked about, at least, when he was screaming at the quarterback and wasting 22 seconds of play clock just yelling at Dan Christ or something like that. There's this calm Zen. I can envision the Indian guitar, the sitar, in the locker room. So I think that he is. I hope. But I do think and I hope that he is too controlled to just. They're not gonna not show up. If they lose, it's because they won't execute. It's not because they're thinking about Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be a tough game in Norman. That's gonna be.
They've also had the benefit of all these other games being big. Navy in Ireland was a big deal. Playing Miami at Soldier Field, that's a big deal. They've had to take it week to week. They really couldn't look ahead of anybody. Against Purdue, it was too early to know what they had. Against Miami and Soldier Field, it was big under the lights in the big city. They couldn't look past anybody, and I don't think that they will. And calling it a trap game is something that's very easy for people to say because they're not as good as Oklahoma, and we just beat Stanford. It's a trap game. Well, no, it's just another game, But we saw enough in the Stanford game that could they lose to BYU? Yeah, they could absolutely lose. If it rained again and they don't take care of the ball, and like you said, BYU does amazing things defensively, and they have half a mind to beat them. Yeah, they could lose every game on their schedule. I don't think they will.
Yeah. What do you got on your list?
Well, one of the notes I had here was just a little bit about the offense, but I don't know if we have to necessarily go into that. But let's talk a little bit about the adversity. You were mentioning to me that Kelly was talking about his halftime speech and saying, "Hey, did you think you weren't going to trail all year?" Is this one of the hallmarks of a really, really good team that they responded, I think, pretty well? They trailed for the first time, and even though that's not that's not the biggest deal. It is the first time they trailed. The weather at times looked like it was a torrential downpour. There was a lot of injuries in the game to deal with, and turnovers, which is mostly a result of execution and weather. But last week, against Miami, they had no turnovers, and it was like full speed ahead. Notre Dame had 3 turnovers in this game. The rain's coming down. They're losing. People are getting nervous. I think they responded very, very, very well, and I think that's one of the biggest symbols of why they are not a mediocre football team is the way they respond against a ranked team when that's just hitting the fan, right?
Yeah. I wonder if they play better on the road than at home. I don't know what it is about home games, but for some reason, it just doesn't ever seem, I don't know, man. I'm almost glad that Oklahoma is at Norman and not in South Bend.
Well, I think a lot of people have made comments about that. There's the angle of the other teams are so amped up to play Notre Dame, and I think that's a little bit too much Notre Dame elitism for me. If you go to a game, the games feel very slow, and they feel like the breaks just feel like a million years long. So I wonder if it's something to do with the NBC telecast. If you go to a game at Notre Dame at night, it feels much more electric, much more exciting. But these 3:30 day games, everybody has just gorged themselves in the tailgate, and maybe the crowd just kind of wants a nap. That was a defensive slugfest for a while, so not a lot of excitement in the speed of that game. And they said a lot in the commentary, it was just a physical, beat-em-up kind of game. And a lot of people that are casual football fans, that's not fun for them, to not see a lot of scoring and just see a field goal battle that goes down to overtime. A lot of people they're not even waking up until the end. So Notre Dame Stadium is definitely a different animal. Anybody that's been there could agree to that. But yeah, I think it's a question of tempo. When you watch them play at home, things just seem like they take forever. Well, before we wrap up, let's go back just a little bit, because obviously this week it wasn't about the X's and O's that much in the Stanford game. We've talked a lot about that, and most of the things that we saw were things we already knew. Eifert going up for a TD catch. I mean, we know that he can do that type of stuff. The stuff the defense was doing, we know they can do those things. So let's just say right now, other than your Twitter flame war, where are you really as a Notre Dame fan? Like, when you think about what Notre Dame deserves moving forward in the season, is this like we've already robbed the bank and now the cops are chasing us, and you know what, if we get caught, we get caught, but it was fun while it lasted? Do you have that kind of feeling, or is this like, this is the real deal and we're about to shock the world against, Oklahoma? Or
robbing the bank would be winning the national title. I mean, to me, this is still in the Ocean's 11 phase where they're drilling underneath the ground and they're setting everything up.
Right.
And so I think this may, for a team to be unranked at the beginning of the season, to go to number 5 in 6 weeks is pretty remarkable to me. I don't know how often that happens. Notre Dame's polarizing. That haters are going to jump out of the woodwork left and right. People like me are just going to go full-on delusional nutbag. Talking smack to everybody like we're invincible. Somewhere in between there is reality. But I don't feel like
Do you feel they're overachieving or underachieving, or this is what has happened thus far is what the team is? Do you feel like it's very well in line?
Our defense is straight up badass. And defense wins championships. And I don't care who the team is. West Virginia scored 14 points or 21 points, and gave up. Yeah, I mean, they got manhandled this week. And the offense is always going to sputter at times if you're out of sync or whatever. Defense is just, it is what it is. I mean, and our guys are just, they're beasts, man. They are just, that defense is a witch you don't want to go against. And that is something that's sustainable. It's not a Shane Walton running back picks. It's not a fluke. Charlie Weiss had a lot of success on offense because nobody had scouted him. Nobody had tape on him the first 2 years. They had no familiarity with what he's doing. And so there's a little scheme to it. West Virginia is very, schemy.
Right.
Boise was real great because they were just perfected scheme. This isn't like that. This is solid fundamental football with guys that are gutty, that know how to win, that play their asses off. And that's what it is. And that's a model that can be replicated in every game through the rest of the year. Now, do we have some weakness? Can we be exposed? Can we find a true, can Landry Jones blow him up? Yeah, he could. He's a good passer, but for now, I like where it's headed.
Yeah,
you know.
well, I agree. I think that, again, for anybody out there, whether you are a Notre Dame fan or you're not, just being intellectually honest and being honest as a football fan, if you watch this team and say they're mediocre on the defense, you're just not seeing what's happening. Now, I have no problem with that indictment of the offense. And I think where Notre Dame may or may not run into any sort of trouble this year is when an offense like I think you're kind of alluding to, when they play an offense that can really score very quickly and they can quick strike out of nowhere.
If somebody gets 14 points on them in the first quarter,
it gets real scary, doesn't it?
It looks rough.
Well,
I feel like we'll make the adjustments and we'll slow down whatever the rate of ascent somebody's offense has initially. I feel like that's going to happen. We've shown good ability to adjust. I'm not sure what this offense can do. Now, that being said, Eifert had a really good game, probably one of his best games of the year. Theo Riddick he is just a man possessed this year. He had several plays where he is just extra effort, banging out a couple extra yards.
I got to mention TJ Jones. It's time for him to get some love on the podcast as well. Maybe we alluded to it earlier, but that guy, the improvement level, he kind of had some dropsies in the past. You know what I mean? The guy catches the ball, and he catches the ball, and you can read his body language that he's ready to move up the field.
He knows where to go with
almost
it.
Kind of like Golden Tate was. But you know what? He doesn't rush it, though. He made that one where he caught it in traffic and kind of looped around there, and he has been kind of quietly like a really, really amazing receiver, I think, this year. So it's time to give him some credit. But yep, going back to what we're saying, if a team could put up a big lead, and the only team that looked like they were able to do that going into the season thus far, the teams that we have played, is Michigan, and they sputtered because Denard kept throwing these picks. That was the only team that said, hey, we can just, in a blink of an eye, we can be up 28-0. And if you watch Michigan play, they really can do that, but they didn't pull that off. So that will be Notre Dame's Achilles heel, is getting down by more than, it's not too much adversity to be trailing by a touchdown at home and having overtime happen in the student section, but on the road, down by 3 TDs at Oklahoma, that's adversity in the dictionary right there.
I feel like we're going to have to score more than 20 points against Oklahoma.
Yeah. Do you see? Yeah.
I mean, BYU could probably be a 20-13 type of affair. I could see that.
I think BYU is going to look very similar to the games you've already seen, and hey, we're doing the podcast, so let's go ahead and jump ahead a little bit to Oklahoma. I think you're going to see the toolbox get open from play calling perspective as well. I think you're going to see every single trick and bell and whistle that the offense has, because I think they're going to need it
against
Oklahoma.
Yeah,
I think they're going to have to do that.
But that's but I hate to be gimmicky like that.
I don't think they have a choice though.
Nah,
I agree.
You're probably right. Couple stats here just to wrap things up. George Atkinson averaged 7 yards a carry against Stanford on the season. He's no longer the leading rusher. Riddick actually passed him, but on the season, Atkinson is averaging 9.1 yards.
Yeah, and Riddick has passed him with let's call it what it is. Riddick has passed him with about 40 more carries than he has. The guy needs to get the ball. I said it last week. He needs to get the ball.
Yeah.
Until he gets stuffed a couple times, but averaging 7 yards. Do the math. The guy needs to get the ball.
Yeah. Oh, again on the season he's averaging 9. So I was a little surprised. I thought we passed a lot more than what I thought we would against Stanford. They got a good D-line, but running the ball I think is going to be critical to this team's success. We'll see.
They've stayed committed. Notre Dame had more passing yards than Stanford in that game. They also had more rushing yards than Stanford in that game. They had more of both, I believe. And they split the carries for the most part between Wood and Riddick. So I think Notre Dame had well over 100 yards rushing, because Golson also had some more yards as well.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we got time to do the full out fact check here, but we're gonna box score. For some reason, so total yards 334 for Notre Dame, 272 to Stanford. We had 60 more passing yards. We had 3 more rushing yards. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think Golson kind of put it over the top. But again, I mean, I think the big story in this one was back to what we didn't see at all in the Miami game, which was a little bit bizarre, no turnovers, is that seeing Notre Dame lost the turnover battle.
We've lost 3 fumbles against Stanford. That just can't happen.
Yeah, so Notre Dame loses the ball 3 times and also gave up 15 yards, and they gave up 70 yards on penalties. And there's too many false starts in the home stadium. So, but getting over things like that and winning an ugly game in the rain, I think that's a sign of a good football team. You beat a ranked team when things are ugly, when the ball's flipping and flopping around on the ground.
It could have been a South Florida. I mean, the weather was damn near the same. It could have been ugly. So, well, you got anything else?
No, hopefully we didn't overlook BYU, but hey, I think a lot of people's eyeballs are starting to peek at the Christmas present that is Oklahoma. But hey, they got to get it done against BYU, and I agree it's going to look similar to some of the previous games. But for everybody out there that thinks this team is mediocre, overrated, underrated, rated just right, we all know we're going to find out in 2 weeks when they play that big one.
And that's the same for us and every other team in the country. You know, regardless of where you think your team is right now.
Yeah, a game
in
like
BCS
that.
and AP, whatever it is. The truth is the season's half over now for most teams. I think everybody's probably played about 6 games. You know, hey, man, it's the midpoint, and you got to close it out, and things are going to change. You know, Oklahoma State last year looked like they could sneak into BCS. They lost last week, and boom, here it's gone. So, so we got to close out, but. The way the defense is playing, props to our the bearded wonder, Matthias Farley. I posted that on YouTube earlier. What a great interception for that kid. He is the Shane Walton now. He's a soccer player. So, Farley is. So,
right, I heard them saying he started playing football. So.
But, yeah, you know, I mean, and amazingly enough, with all the lack of experience in our secondaries, we've had a ton of pay. We've had 10 picks this year, which is two more than we had all of last year.
Yeah.
You know, missing a guy like Lowood, missing a guy like Slaughter, missing a guy like Collinsworth, and we're not even missing them. I mean, we are, but we're not. It just blows my mind. And the next man in is philosophy is working for Kelly. So far, so good. Matt wanted us to make sure we pointed out last week. He said the O-line was going to be critical to our success, and he wanted to point out that he thought the O-line did a great job. And I thought they did okay.
Yeah, well, I had a little bit of a bone with, like I said, so many false starts. And the other thing was Stanford was rushing more than anything they had seen yet. So we saw some sacks, we saw a lot of pressure, we saw Golson kind of doing the scared cat thing. But that team was they were blitzing left and right, and that was something that was a little bit different. And for the most part, it was pretty effective. It also became their Achilles heel when Reese came in, read the all-dog blitz, and threw it over the top to Eifert. You know what? That's coaching, and that's why I'm so excited to watch Notre Dame, because they didn't just get steamrolled by the blitz. They adjusted, and on plays like that, it's important.
Do you see any scenario where we don't have some mix of quarterbacks through the rest of the year? I think it's always going to be like this. I mean, Golson has just so much upside, but he makes a lot of mistakes, man.
Right.
And the way he runs with the ball, it's hanging out there. Dude, it's wet. You're not carrying it on the laces. You're dangling the thing out away from your body. It's disaster waiting to happen. And it sucks that he got concussed. But someone had made this comment earlier on Twitter. I'd cite you, but I can't remember who it was. Maybe it's a good thing that he's got to sit out for a couple of days before he gets cleared to practice again, where he could sit and look at his film. You know, and just soak it all in, because if they're going to do it, he's going to have to play well. You know, he is.
I think the bottom line is, and we've already seen this.
Because I don't think Reese is. I don't feel like Reese will win if he played. If Golson was done, let's say he was done and he wasn't playing. Do you think Notre Dame wins out with Reese the rest of the year?
I don't think, and this is the weirdest thing to say, but I don't think they went out with only Golson, and I don't think they went out with only Reese. It's this weird yin yang thing, and you call it what you want, but Kelly puts in Reese when he needs. He puts him in when he needs control and when he needs it to be somewhat predictable, and he puts Golson in there when there's enough buffer with the score. There's enough margin of error to have it be electric and have it be something that the other team really can't game for. Like when you see Reese back there, you know you can pressure the guy, but you also have to.
After he threw that touchdown pass, he just turned. It's just stone cold. He just turned like. I'm sure he was excited. He walked off the field like no big deal. The guy's got ice water veins.
All I do is come in and win football games. So, hey, coach, I'm here when you need me. I mean, you can't imagine
unreal.
what's going on in their head. But, again, it goes back to seemingly the culture they've created. We have so many guys replacing and so many guys that are just coming in very important points and very important positions like quarterbacks. So, whatever it is, it works. The injuries, when they've happened to Golson, have seemingly been kind of convenient, kind of weird. But the bottom line is he's been yanked at least once because Kelly just does not have full confidence in him.
I agree. And I don't think he should either. I mean, he hasn't demonstrated full competency in every aspect of the game. And turnovers will kill you. You got lucky. They turned the ball over a couple times too, and that's why it was close. Otherwise, that could have been a bad game. But we're at 30 minutes. This is probably the longest one we've done so far. I don't feel like doing a whole lot of editing because it's late, so let's wrap it up here.
There you go.
We'll meet the Mormons. So it's like a Romney-Ryan affair here on next Saturday.
Mormon and Catholic,
Mormon and Catholics.
I wish everybody could win.
Yeah. All right. So be good. Hope everybody went to church.
Don't
today.
overlook that trap game.
And we'll spring the trap on Saturday. What are they? The Cougars?
The Cougars, yeah,
Cougs?
BYU Cougars.
All right, Cougar lost it, turned in his wings. You guys are number one now.
All right.
See ya.